Okay, that's absolutely fine. I'll leave that before I say any more then. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Colne Area's September meeting, again conducted by Teams remotely and streamed on the council's YouTube system. I hope everybody finds it satisfactory. I know it's not as good as a live meeting, but we at least seem to be getting through some business. So welcome, councillors, and do I have any apologies? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Okay, I have no notifications of questions from members of the public. The minutes of the last meeting, is everybody happy with those, or are there any comments? Then can I take it that they are unanimously agreed? Yep, lots of nods, I'll take that. Please put your hand up or speak if you're not happy with anything I've said. Progress reports. Anybody? Any queries, questions?
Hello.
Is that Councillor Foxley?
Both of us, yeah. Apologies. It's a long story.
I'm sure.
With the fascist regime, that means that I can't forward emails to myself.
Right, okay. So just very quickly, if I can, Councillor, if you'll indulge me, there's been an issue at other council meetings with actually who's there when there's decision making. It is particularly poignant for you because there's two councillors working off one computer. If you could be quite sure that if one of you is leaving the meeting, you tell us.
Yeah, sure.
And again, hopefully most of our decisions are unanimous. If not, I need to be sure who is against or not, so that when the records are looked at, nobody is upset that they've been they've made a decision that they're not happy with. All right, so I'll continue on. We're up to the progress report. I've had nobody wish to comment on that. And next is police issues. I don't believe police are in attendance tonight.
Graham?
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor.
It's just reference the drug taking again. It's rife. It's back in full force. Same places across from the Duke, under the archery, behind the library, and obviously at the graveyard. They're more taking drugs at the graveyard than buying and selling them. But it's back in full force. We really need to get somebody to have a look at it. This has been going on for years now, and it's the same places. Can we write to the police and ask them to investigate further, please?
Okay, I understand what you said. I've got Sarah Cogan-Price to speak. Sarah?
Just to say that David and I were in the Colne Community Safety Partnership yesterday, and sadly no police came to that either, which was disappointing because we had several loose ends that we were hoping to ask about in terms of stone theft and things like that. But I'm sure Margaret will want to come in next to talk about some of the ideas, projects, beginning brainstorming sessions that we have going on regarding youth antisocial behaviour. We have various things going on, and I'll hand over to my colleague here.
Hi, I think it's a huge concern.
Excuse me, Chair. I've had my hand up for a couple of minutes.
Sorry, Dot.
I don't know whether you can see me or not.
Who's Margaret, Dot?
Sorry?
Right, Dot.
Margaret, Dot.
Okay, Dot, shall I tell you what the problem is? When you don't speak, you don't appear on my screen.
Right.
It only shows 9. The 9 people that have spoken.
Right.
So Margaret is got a little hand she can put up. I see that.
Yeah.
That's a mechanical hand on the machine.
I don't
It's not
have
a
that.
real hand.
I don't have that. All
No, I
right.
know. That's what I say. So
Yeah.
you're switched off on my screen. So if you put your hand up, nobody sees you. So you've got to speak. Okay, I will call you after Margaret. Margaret, if you'd like to continue, sorry.
Yeah, one of the main concerns, certainly in Holsworth, is the antisocial behaviour of young people, specifically in Boregrove Park. It's causing a great deal of distress, and quite rightly so. Their behaviour is really just not acceptable. It's upsetting people with young children. The police have been doing some sort of drive-bys and getting out of the car and inspecting occasionally, but we really do need to work on this now. I've arranged to meet with Matt Lunny to look at how we can perhaps use a restorative approach, get these young people together. We do have some photos. I've seen this group of people. I know who they are. Well, I don't know their names, and I don't know where they live, but I have seen them frequently. And I think we really do need to give, certainly the people who are very distressed with this, an opportunity to actually say to these youngsters, this is what harm you're causing, this is how you're making us feel. And I'm hoping that the police will work with me and perhaps another trained volunteer in restorative justice, and we can use this. We've worked on a similar case up at Alkincoats, and that was successful. So that's one thing. I agree with Neil. I think the increase in drug taking is really, really worrying. We're seeing these what are they called, Paul? These canister popper things. They're just on the road. They're thrown out of cars. There's a lot of drug taking going on in the back of cars at the moment, and the back of speeding cars. That's another issue that I know Sarah's working on really hard to try and do something about the speeds of cars. Certainly, we know along Keithley Road in Nature Bridge, it's just like a racetrack. It's so scary. Something has got to happen. We've said to the police that it's mainly Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. I'm sure we could work on it a bit more successfully. With regard to Neil's point about the cemetery, I believe that the person who lives in the cemetery house, as part of their rental agreement, they carry out walks around the cemetery and check out what's going on. They certainly used to do that. I know when we started visiting the cemetery on a regular basis after Jess's death, there was somebody there every night patrolling, and they were really good, and that was part of their duty. And I think that really needs looking into, because there's a lot of negative behaviour going on in the cemetery. So I don't know whether I've covered everything, Sarah, but the two main points for me are the antisocial behaviour with young people, the drug taking that's happening, and also the speeding of cars. And that it's young people in the cars. I've seen them, and they are major issues that we've got to really keep suggesting to the police that they really look at these areas, because before they just get out of hand. So that's my little update. Don't know if there's anything I've missed out, Sarah.
Just the brainstorming meeting that we're having with the youth worker on the 28th, trying to get our hands on any crime commissioner, LCC funding pots, or at least identify them, and also brainstorm a series of projects that will be deliverable short and long term. Some of the projects that have been successful in the past would not be successful now because of social distancing.
Yeah.
Dot, you wish to speak? Hi, Dot. Dot Lord, you on? Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can hear you.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the in particular this week, the vandalism has been quite alarming. The worst I've seen it in a long time. Now, what I'm going to ask now, the Ballsworth councillors a few weeks ago had a meeting with Inspector Bost. Has any of that meeting been shared with any of the other of these committee members here? The outcome of that meeting, has it been shared?
I wrote, because it was Ballsworth, I wrote to the parish councils for Laneshire Bridge and...
Has it been shared with any of the members on this
I'm happy to send forward the email that I sent to the parish councils.
Right, let me stop you there, Sarah. This is quite annoying to me because this is Colne Area Committee. We are a committee. We're meant to work together. And it seems to me that this isn't happening. Now, I have a meeting, finally, with Inspector Bost next Tuesday at 1:30 at Colne Police Station. Any one of you are very welcome to come along with me. I've had to fight for this meeting. It's taken a month for Inspector Bost to even reply to me, but now he has. But since you had your meeting and since you put the photograph on Facebook with the inspector, I've been waiting for some feedback from what is happening and what we're meant to be doing, and are we involved in this? This is to do with all of us, not 3 councillors in Ballsworth. I've never ever known anything like this in my 20 odd years of being a councillor. Let's work together on this. It's affecting all of us in every ward, not just Ballsworth. And I realise it's very upsetting for the people in Ballsworth, as it is in Waterside, Horsfield and Vivery. So let's get on with it together, please. Thank you.
Okay, Dot.
Hi.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Just to come back on that, I'm pretty sure that Sarah and myself, we did make that an open invitation to everybody at the last Colne Area Committee about the meeting with the police. Sarah emphasised that anybody was welcome to go who could make it. And I know it was on Facebook, but she did give a very, very lengthy summary of the meeting and all the things that had come out of the meeting. And as she said, because there were specific Ballsworth problems, she contacted the parish councils, and I'm very grateful to her for doing that. But yeah, I agree with you entirely. We need to work together. This is a massive problem. It is a massive problem. And I think I take your point on the vandalism, because that's something I missed out. There's a bit of vandalism going on in the playground in Ballsworth, and it seems almost as if they've gone back to school and they're kicking off in an aggressive way. And I don't like it. I don't think it's a positive future, and unless we do really nip this in the bud.
Okay, I've got Sarah wishing to speak.
Yeah. Inspector Bost last month, because of social distancing, did limit the meeting. I do remember that. There were only so many of us that could meet in the police station, and it was mainly a Ballsworth meeting. It is true to say that what I put on Facebook was not the whole picture, and that was because we were told some things that probably it wouldn't be wise to put into a public context. So either we could discuss those at the private end of this meeting, or I could happily, in confidence, forward the whole picture that I sent to the parish councils to Lynn or all the councils on this committee. And you could see the whole picture that was discussed at that meeting, and it might inform Dorothy's meeting, which presumably is largely focused on Waterside.
Okay, thank you. So if I can try and sort of pull all together.
Excuse me,
So
can I
I
just
hope
come
everybody's
back on
happy.
that, Graham? Graham, can I just come back
Yeah,
on that?
okay.
The meeting I'm
Yeah.
having,
Well,
the meeting I'm having on Tuesday does not entirely focus on Waterside. It's the whole of Colne.
good. So if we can pull that all together. So Sarah's going to forward round all those minutes, which I've seen because they were sent to Forward's Parish Council as well as me. So you will all be able to see that. I will invite Sarah to talk about the more private side of those things when we exclude the public later on, if you wish to. Now, are you happy to take the things spoken about today forward, Dot, or do you wish me for the committee to write to the inspector separately? Your choice. I'm quite happy for you to take it forward if everybody else is. If not, I will ask Lynn to write to him. What would you like us to do?
To be perfectly honest, the message I wanted to get across is we should all be working together. I understand
Absolutely.
what Margaret and Sarah have said,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
I'll carry on with my meeting on Tuesday and I'll give feedback from that. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Do you
for
want
that.
to take? Okay, right. Okay then, Lynn. So from that, you need to write to raising the issues that we've spoken of tonight, which is drug taking, social behaviour in Ball Grove, speeding cars, taking drugs in cars, with the cemetery social behaviour and general and
Chairman, you are breaking up a lot.
that's it. Of the cemetery is responsible at some stage by email.
Can't hear you, Chair.
You can't hear me.
Chairman, could I just suggest you turn your camera off just for a little while and see if
Yeah,
that makes
absolutely. Let me see if we can improve that. Okay, I'm going to start talking again now. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Hear me well? Okay.
Yes, much better.
So I would ask one of the council officers if they could confirm with us if the occupant of the house at the cemetery has any requirements for walking the grounds, and if so, can we take it up with him and ask him to do whatever is in his deeds, the contracts. If not, then we have no call on that. Is that right, Lynn?
So, Chairman, we'll note that, and the relevant officer, which I don't know who it is yet, but David Walker probably will ensure that message gets conveyed.
Thank you. That's absolutely fine. So that heads that one off, and Lynn will write to the inspector independently of Dot's meeting. If I know you're busy, and I totally accept that. If that could be emailed to him before that meeting, it would be excellent. I realise you're busy. If you can't, you can't. But that would have some sense. I've got Councillor Foxley and then Councillor Mann.
Yeah, just very quickly, Graham, could we add to the person at the cemetery caretaker? They never close the gates and lock the gates like they used to do. They used to stick to the times. The gates would be closed at a certain time in spring and a certain time in winter. They're just open the whole time now. It's very shoddy what's going on there, and it needs smartening up. It needs somebody to really look into what's going on and whether they are carrying out their duties. It's not just patrolling round, it is really, thinking about closing those gates, and let's protect the cemetery because it should be a protected place.
I agree.
Okay. Councillor Mann, you have your hand up.
No, I'm really sorry.
at the moment. So it is on at the moment, but I'm going to have to sort that out. I might have to just wave.
Oh, right. I understand. Whether it's your end or my end, it was very gurgly. Clegg, I've got you indicating to...
Yes, Chairman. Just so everyone is up to speed and knows what was said about the problems that we're having on several play areas in Colne, what was said at last night's meeting. I did report at last night's meeting that there's been quite a bit of damage at King George's, same on Alkin Courts, and quite a lot, particularly a lot more today at Waterside. But what I did report was that there's, on Monday of this week, the police came up to the town hall and they've actually gone away with about 20 minutes of video footage of the damage that happened at Alkin Courts Park, and the quality of the pictures is very clear. In fact, I reported this last night, it's as clear as looking at you lot on screen now. So if something doesn't come from that, to be honest, Chairman, I give up.
You better hope they haven't got their video camera turned off like me then. Yeah, that is good news. So there's something on that. Well, hopefully, David, Dot will get some feedback from her meeting, because I'm sure that will come up. So if you're happy, perhaps we can now move on. I think we've got quite a few irons in the fire for this particular issue. Everybody happy now? Okay. So up is the planning application, and the first one is 0143. I have the agent Claire Bradley to speak. Are you there, Claire?
I am, yes. Can everybody hear me?
We can, thank you.
Right, do you want me to start now?
Please do. You have the floor.
Chairman, sorry, Claire, just before, would it be helpful if whilst Claire speaks, I put the plans up?
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Please do.
Sorry, Claire, to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Start whenever you're ready, Claire.
Right, yeah, it's only short. I won't take the full length of time. My name's Claire Bradley from Kirkwell's Planning Consultants, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant. The proposed development is the erection of a part 2-storey, part single-storey extension to the side of a converted barn, and it incorporates an attached garage and roof terrace. The proposed extension will be finished in stone with a stone slate roof and UPVC fenestration. The application also includes the addition of a roof light and window to the rear of the existing building, and the retrospective regularisation of differences between the approved and as-built barn conversions and extensions. These are all detailed in the officer report. In the alterations to the approved plans of the barn conversion and the extensions result in an overall improvement in the as-built development over the approved plans. They remove a number of new window openings that were proposed, reduce the approved increase in the height, and simplified the glazing of the barn door opening. They alter the design of the windows to be more in keeping with the original agricultural character of the building, and reduce the width and simplify the design of the rear extension. The case officer sees the retrospective alterations as being acceptable. In terms of the extension, this is a contemporary design that mirrors the proportions of the form of the main building. It's separated from the main building by a glazed link, which would make the extension appear distinctly separate. The extension will be set behind the building against a steep hillside in the most prominent public views from the northeast, and it would not appear as an intrusive feature in the landscape. In terms of the case officer report, he's assessed it against all the policies of the Pendle Development Plan and found the proposal to be acceptable and in accordance with those policies. And I trust that committee will support your officer in his recommendation. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Neil, is there anything you wish to say at this juncture?
No, Chairman, I think Claire and the committee report have covered what I would say, so I don't want to just go over ground again for the sake of it.
Okay. Councillors, would anyone wish to make a proposal or speak or ask a question? Councillor Coburn-Price.
Well, Torden Parish Council are not happy with all of this application, and so as there isn't anybody from Torden Parish Council, I feel behoven upon me to put their perspective. I note in the officer's report that there's been the simplification of some of the glazing, which is to be welcomed, and I understand as well that the building can be read and should be read as the building and then the contemporary extension. However, these horizontal design windows, I do feel are perhaps modish now, but might not be in the future, just having lived from the 1970s. And the officer's report says they face the hillside and would not be prominent, and that actually they could be changed to be that way under permitted development rights in the future. But that's not how we deal with planning applications. You know, quite a lot of the time in conservation areas, if it's a we say the development must be this, but we wouldn't have approved it as that, though of course we accept the fact that in the future permitted development rights can cause change. I don't think we should start from that position, and so I feel that I must support the quite strong feelings of Torden Parish Council in this part retrospective application, because of course plans are brought, and that is, when they're passed, what is expected to be built.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Nixon. Jonathan.
Can I just ask Neil, please, to bring up the elevations? Because I'm just looking on the Pendle portal now, and the drawings are there, and I'm just struggling to work out. I mean, I'm usually quite good at reading drawings because it's what I do for a job. But I just want to. It doesn't state existing versus proposed, I don't think. Is there any way of making that any bigger, Neil?
Jonathan, I'm having the same issue. I'm looking at them online and struggling myself.
Well, thank God you said that, Paul, because you're an architect.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'm just trying to resize them now.
Okay.
The technology is not exactly working. Chairman, would it help if I just try and explain that there are three sets of drawings for three stages of this, Chairman? That's the before. This is the development as approved, although there were some changes to that from the approved. I've got the approved drawings here if you wish to look at them. For example, you see in this location here, there was a full glazed, full height glazing. You can see the windows as approved. Here you can see that all the windows weren't put in and the full height glazing wasn't installed. So this is the approved scheme, although the modified version, but you can see the larger extension here, which was approved at that time, as in here. So this is the actual 2013-14 approved scheme. Chairman, and then this is, oh, sorry, I'll just point one more thing out. We also allowed a garage here under that application. So the garage would sit where this proposed extension is. And as Ms Bradley said, there is a hillside, and one of the reasons why we're saying that these windows aren't particularly prominent is because of that hillside. But Chairman, just going on from Councillor Coburn-Price, I agree that's not a good form of fenestration. But if that's the only issue members have got, I'm sure that we could get a very quickly amended scheme to alter that design. The rest of it, Chairman, I think is what I think here. The glaze link gives it. This is the more historic section of it. That's meant to be obviously modern. Two very distinct. And I think that works particularly as it is at the back, and it wouldn't be particularly publicly prominent.
Okay, Neil, I've got Councillor Coburn Price indicating to speak, unless Jonathan, you've not finished. Have you any?
No, that's fine. I think Neil's suggestion regarding the fenestration is a good one. To me, it looks like quite a bonny proposal, really. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. If my memory serves, it was those horizontal windows did upset them, and if you look at what we're calling the garage extension, the depth and height of those windows, and I don't know whether you have the same feeling about that, or we should treat them as two separate things.
Okay.
Sorry, so was that a question to me, Councillor?
Yes, it is. Sorry, it is a question to you.
Chairman, what I think about this is a bit. I'm not comparing it at all like the Louvre, but the concept's the same. Make it absolutely more. You know, if you're going to have a contrast, don't try and have some horrible pastiche. Have a contrast. And I understand the comments of the parish about these windows, but you have to look at it in context. If it's not going to be seen, what is the planning harm? You cannot just have something in principle, because you know we fell foul of that on the tram tracks in Trawden, where the principle we have to have wood, and the inspector said actually you don't. You have to look at it in its context. So I do understand, and if it was at the front, I'd have a different view on this. But it is well tucked away and won't be prominent. But I think also you could get a better fenestration detail there. So you know, as Councillor Nixon referred to, but this, I think the glazing and the amount of glass there will make it look a complete contrast, not trying to, and I think that would work well.
No, I actually agree with you. I was just merely trying to represent the parish council. I would be personally, and I know the committee isn't just about me, it's all of us, but I would be personally very happy if we could just look at reshaping or resizing or redetailing those other windows in the traditional part, and I'm happy to keep the modern bit looking modern. That's my view.
Okay, Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with the comment made about the extensive glazing on the new bit. I think that is entirely appropriate for the contrast between new and old. Obviously, I'm talking about the bit that not the slot window, which I think we're all agreed is perhaps less than ideal. I just have a question for Neil, please, which is I noticed from the location plan, there's, unless I'm misreading this, there's a path shown running from sort of northwest to southeast past this building, and I'm just thinking that, is that a public footpath? If so, then surely when we're talking about it not being prominent from public viewpoints, that may not necessarily be the case. So I just want to clarify that, because it looks to run right up to and past this building through, I presume, what was a farmyard. Is it possible to answer that?
Neil, you're still muted.
Yes, Chairman, it is a public footpath. I take the view of that, though, that if you walk right up to the side of something, it's prominent. I'm talking about general views around and about. Obviously, if you walk up to any development, you walk up to the side of it, it's going to be prominent. But when you look at it from holistically from general public viewpoints, I don't think it is going to be that prominent. But Councillor Fox is absolutely right. If you walked up that footpath, you would see every nook and cranny of the development.
Anybody got any other questions, any comments, or would somebody like to make a proposal? Councillor Coburn-Price.
I propose that we approve it, subject to the officers reaching a sensible agreement on those inappropriate windows, which I think it is even more important that they can be seen by members of the public and so are more prominent than we were originally thinking. But I think that we should approve it subject to that improvement being made.
Okay. Are you happy to take that on, Mr. Watson?
Chairman, it's sensible, yes.
Okay. Do I have a seconder, please, for that proposal?
I'll second that.
Councillor Foxley, second it. All those in favour, or does anybody wish to speak against or amend the proposal before us? Okay, all those in favour then, if you don't speak, I will assume you're in favour. I've heard nothing, Lynn, so I'm happy to accept that. Is that all right with you?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors. So we move on. That was unanimous as proposed. The next is Mr. Anwar. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Anwar. You have the floor.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you for letting us speak on behalf of the client. Secondly, it's obviously this was on the agenda for last month's meeting, and there was an issue with the tree abutting a TPO tree which was taken down on the Barrowford Road boundary. Obviously, since that meeting, we've been in discussions with the council tree and environment officer regarding that tree. And we've agreed that a tree will be replanted in the same position. We've also obviously had a look at where the tree was. We've looked at the council records to see if it actually would have any impact on the extension. And obviously, speaking to Lee Johnson, the tree officer, he's obviously agreed that it is approximately about 6 metres away from the extension itself. So even if the tree was there, we believe we'd still be able to go ahead in terms of building the extension if it was approved. With tree protection measures in place and obviously piled foundations in that corner. Obviously, Neil's looking at a legal precedent in terms of the approval or refusal based on the taking down of that tree. I've spoken to the clients and they're happy to assist the council in any prosecution that they're going to go forward with. That's it, to be honest. And we're here if there's any questions that need answering. We'll obviously be here for the course of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things on that. Went away with committee wanting to know what the position is in terms of whether, because a tree had been removed, it could lead to a refusal. Secondly, about whether a tree could be planted back in there. Chairman, we think a small tree, a cherry, could be planted back in, but you're not going to get the size of tree that was there previously. Mr. Johnson, our tree officer, was asked by the applicant whether the development and the protected tree that was there could have been built whilst the tree remained. Chairman, obviously we cannot answer that properly, but Mr. Johnson spoke to him today. It's more probable than not that with the right tree root barriers, etc., in there, you probably could have had them both together. But that is, to be honest, Chairman, it's a bit of a red herring for this. Chairman, you asked for a legal position about whether refusal could be made based on the tree having been removed. Chairman, the answer to that is no. And I'll share something with you, Chairman, with committee. This is taken from the Planning Act, the 1990 Planning Act, Section 210. The approach of the courts is to say if anybody removes a tree that's protected, you can prosecute. And Chairman, when you look at point 3, what it says is, in determining the amount of any fine to be imposed on a person, the court shall have regard to any financial benefit which has accrued or appears likely to accrue as a consequence of the offence. So Chairman, that's the approach the courts take. You can't refuse based on the tree having been there, because that would be unreasonable because it's gone. But what you can do in a prosecution, if a developer benefits from, I'll be outlandish, £10 million because they take a woodland down, they can be fined £10 million. So the court's approach is you can't refuse permission, but what you can do is if the matter's prosecuted and the developers benefited from that, then the amount of benefit can be seen within the fine. I hope that clarifies the position that members wanted me to look at last month.
Okay, Neil. Some of the sound on the end is very poor. Could you just indicate if you can hear me? Okay, Neil.
Yes, I can.
You can. Okay. So some of you are coming through a bit gargled. Whether that's my end or it's the whole system, I'm not sure. So, Jonathan, if I drop off the edge of the world, will you take over, please? You on standby. So, anybody else? I've got Councillor Foxley indicating to speak. Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I'm a little confused now because we've been told, on the one hand, that the original large tree could probably have been kept without affecting the extension, providing that protective measures were taken. But on the other hand, we're being told that any new tree would have to be a small tree like a cherry. So I'm very confused about that because I don't see the difference and why a tree that would grow to similar size to the original tree could not be planted in that location, subject to any sensible and necessary protective measures. So that's that part, and I think if we are saying that the extension could have been built anyway with the existing tree in situ, then surely what Mr. Watson's just said about the level of fine according to financial gain resulting from the removal of the tree, if it was possible to keep the tree and build the extension, surely there's an argument that there is no financial gain from removal of the tree. So, we could fall neatly between two stools here, I feel.
I think that is the whole point, Councillor Foxley, that it would be difficult for us to proceed against them because of that very thing that you've just said. But anyway, Mr. Watson, I'll call you in if I have misunderstood.
Chairman, there is a rational explanation. The position of the tree previously was immediately next to the wall. If you planted a new tree there in its old location, you would automatically lead to structural problems to the neighbouring property and to the walls. So the location of the new tree will not be somewhere where the old tree will not be somewhere where you will plant a new tree. It was basically in a position where it could damage the wall and infrastructure. It's not. So that explains the difference between the locations, Chairman. It was squeezed against the wall and therefore further away from the house. Chairman, I'm not saying we can't prosecute at all, but Councillor Fox is again right. If the development could have been squeezed into that spot, and I've been very careful with my language because we can't tell because the tree's gone, and neither can the applicant know. But we can and still prosecute just for the fact that the tree has been removed without consent. And it's a level of fine for that which will be affected, not whether we can or can't prosecute. But Chairman, I need to make it clear that these are not material to this application in that sense. They're discussions about the prosecution.
Councillors, could I just ask everyone who's not talking to mute, please? There's an awful lot of background noise then, we could barely hear. I've got Councillor Neil Butterworth indicated to speak, and then I'll come back to you, Paul, if you've got any more you want to ask. Is that okay? Okay, Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. In the past, prosecuting people that have taken trees down has been, well, literally a farce, because there was a case that Neil spoke about, I think it was last year. Three large trees was taken down, you know, which gained advantage to a building, and it was charged £50. Now, if you are going to prosecute people for taking trees down with a preservation order on, then you should be severely fined. £50 for 3 trees is stupid. And I just think if we are going to prosecute, we should, because we need to set a precedent that people cannot just take it on themselves to cut trees down, knowing that they're doing wrong. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm still confused, but in a slightly different way now, because we were told at the beginning that a tree will be replanted in the original position, about 6 metres away from the extension. So is Mr. Watson saying that that is not the case? Because that's what I understand him to have just said.
No, Chairman.
Not in the original position.
Chairman, if I may, there are the tree replacement, because we want similar larger specimens to go back in. They can't go in that location. They've been required to go to the back of the house because obviously a larger tree has a larger impact. What Mr. Johnson thinks is a small tree, a very small tree, you know, a blossoming cherry, which is 4 or 5 metres high, as opposed to a 30-metre high sycamore, might be able to go into that space. So apologies for any confusion, but it's the scale of tree that also matters.
So just to clarify, the tree we're talking about at the front has nothing to do with the replacement of the trees illegally removed.
Well, Chairman, two things. The tree replacement for the TPRs required them to go to the back because we want larger specimens, and that cannot go at the front. This is about a landscaping issue and something which could marginally compensate for that as part of this application, which is the only scale of tree that could go at the front potentially is something like a cherry, which is a small tree which wouldn't have the girth and tree root and expanse of a sycamore or an ash or something of that nature.
I still don't understand how we were told that the original tree could have been kept and an extension still built.
Chairman, because of the location of that was in a place where culturally, we wouldn't ask for it to go back now. It was against the wall, so it's in a corner immediately adjacent to the street. And that could, if you were to replant there, you wouldn't do that now because it will cause damage to that wall. Historically, it's been there for 100 years, whatever it was there for, I don't know, but it grew there. If you replanted one of that size, you would not plant it next to the wall, because within a few years, that in the scale of the tree, it would start to damage the wall. That's the difference.
But did you not say that the arboricultural advice was that it would have been possible, probably possible, to have kept the original tree with suitable protective measures and still built the extension?
Yes.
Well, what's the difference between that and planting a new tree with protective measures in that location?
Because you wouldn't plant a new tree next to a wall. because it could undermine the wall.
I see where you're coming from, Paul. I really do. I really do.
I'm sorry, I don't accept that at all. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, sorry, Chairman, but it would be like saying you would have a foundations to a house, you would build, and then you would plant a tree that could grow to 30 metres immediately adjacent to those foundations.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can do that. You can do that if you make suitable provision in the foundations. You know, I don't accept that at all. But you know, let's not make any more of it. There's no way I accept that. Sorry, that is poppycock. And I'm very disappointed.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm
very disappointed that the agent led on this application by misleading us to believe that one of the new trees was going to be planted. He didn't mention it was a very small tree in the original position. I think there's been...
Chairman, that suggestion has come since committee. There was no plans to plant the tree, and that's come from the discussions between us, and that's the advice I'm getting from our tree expert.
I'm saying that the agent led on this discussion by saying a tree will be replanted. I've written it down, will be replanted in the original position, which is not so, about 6 metres away from the extension, so it doesn't affect the extension. And that we were led to believe would be one of the replacement trees, and there was no mention of it being small at that stage. So I'm just very disappointed by the way this has been presented. Anyway, at least we've got some clarity on it, but I'm afraid I do not accept that if an existing large tree was capable of being mitigate the presence of that tree, then I do not accept that the new tree couldn't have been treated in the same way. It would be more expensive for the extension, agreed, but I do not accept that at all. Going back years, if anyone knows the information centre up at Grassington, Tourist Information Centre, that is built over, right next to, and over all the roots of some very mature trees. And the foundation solution was extremely complicated, but it worked and it has not damaged those trees. It's done all the time. It's just not ideal.
Okay, I've got Councillor Greaves. Councillor Greaves, do you wish to speak?
I do know I've unmuted. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just say, I think Councillor Foxley is being pernickety in his arguments, at the very least. The position that we've got on this is not ideal, and we regret that we're in the position that we're in. But the things that you do, if you're wanting to take account of historic features or ecological features or whatever, which are there in order to create a development which is compatible with them, are one thing. But if those features have disappeared and aren't there anymore, then the position is quite different. People may say, well, he's getting away with it. But we've been through all that, and I think Mr. Watson's report makes it quite clear what the position is legally. But if you are building a new building, you don't then deliberately put something in its way to make it awkward, such as a new large tree, or wait for it to grow, unless it is really very important indeed. And I would suggest that in this case, it is not really very important indeed that a new large tree goes back in exactly the same position as the old tree that was knocked down. Very often you have to compromise. And on the one hand, you might compromise by doing things which are potentially harmful to the building. But in this case, you compromise by saying, well, that is the sensible way to deal with it, given the position that we now have on the ground. So planning isn't a matter of purity, it's a matter of compromise. And I think we just have to bite our tongue and accept the position that we're in and get the best we can out of it, which is what we so often have to do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mann. Councillor Mann.
I'm just wondering. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes. Brilliant. Well, regardless of which tree we actually plant, along with Tony Greaves there, a cherry. Are we suggesting that they're not going to applicant, or are we just going to ignore the fact that they did take down this tree?
Okay, I only heard a very small part of that. Did anybody else hear clearly what was said? Okay, Councillor Mann, could you say that again, please? We didn't hear what you said.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
Could you try turning off your video?
Wondering that regardless of what tree goes into this.
Try turning off your video, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, I'll
Turn
try.
your video off. It might improve your audio.
Can't do that.
No?
Chairman?
Yeah.
I believe she tried to say, regardless of what tree is going in there, are we going to let them get away with just cutting the tree down? I think that's what she tried to say. Is that right, Alice?
Thank you. That's exactly what I said.
Okay, that's great.
That's
Then
exactly what I said.
Thank
you.
My understanding from what the councillors have said and from what Neil Watson has already said, we are on very thin ice if we try to link the removal of the tree to the decision of a planning application. Is that correct, Mr. Watson?
Yes, Chairman.
Right. So let us determine the planning application as it is before us, and then I will give you time to tell the officers what you would like them to do about the removal of the tree. Is that a sensible way forward, Mr. Watson? Okay. I think I understand where all the members are coming from. We hate being over a barrel in this way and have the feeling that we've somehow been seen off. Whether we have or not remains a subjective matter. So I think we need to have a look at the planning application and come to a decision. Now, if nobody else will do, Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're obviously not going to, for want of a better term, win the argument on this one, seemingly. So I'm just wondering, an idea has popped into my mind whereby we ask that it's written in as a planning condition that the applicant plants a tree or several trees of a similar description on council-owned land as a compromise.
I see Mr. Watson saying no there. Would you like to explain it?
Chairman, that would be ultra vires. That would be, you can only put requirements on to make this development acceptable. And Chairman, it could even be seen as a case involving Tesco where you buy a planning permission because you're making environmental improvements. So I understand. Believe me, I do understand members' frustrations with this because can never condone cutting down a TPO tree, but I think some of the remedies perhaps are going beyond what is lawfully correct.
I got Councillor Coburn-Price got a hand up.
I'd like to go away from the tree entirely. Let's put the tree behind us. As I said last month, I do feel that this application has improved. The roof has been lowered, it's been set back a bit, and this I accept, may just be me. If we look at page 11 of the officer's report, it says, in relation to two-storey side extensions, the design principles requires that such developments to respect the balance and the symmetry. For me, symmetry is a thing. It's a completely symmetrical house. I've got a completely symmetrical house, and my extension is probably 15 feet back. Symmetry of the main dwelling, whilst also avoiding a terracing effect with adjacent properties. Therefore, it must be ensured that any extensions to the dwelling are appropriate to its proportions and Victorian vernacular form. So, proportions. The whole main building is 12 metres wide and the extension is 7. The officer's report suggests that that is probably appropriate. My feeling is that it is too big. I do feel that 7 and 12 are really not so very far apart. And I know that you all know that I do have a couple of prejudices. Juliet balconies, that's not here. Illuminated signs, I'm not keen on them, that's not here. But here we have on the front facade, and I know they're modish, a whacking expanse of 7 metres basically of bifold doors. And to me, and we have just discussed an extension where we've had a radically modern section put onto an old house. What we've got here is an unhappy compromise, because at first floor level, we're pretending life's going on as normal, but at ground floor level, we've got Beverly Hills. And, you know, you've got to decide which way round you're going. We're either going to have something amazing with glass and steel and, I don't know, just phenomenal as the modern thing that is the total difference between the Victorian house, or we have the Victorian house with a subservient extension of an appropriate size with very well-mannered bay window or French windows or something of that ilk. That's my personal take on this.
Okay. Anybody else? I can't see anybody else indicating. Councillor Greaves. Councillor Greaves, yeah.
You're right. It's
Okay.
my usual thing of not wanting to unmute myself. Don't know why not. I was waiting actually because I'm interested to know what Councillor Clegg thinks about it. But as a ward councillor, anyway, I'll tell you my feelings. I think that what Councillor Coburn Price has just said is half right and half wrong. I don't think that the size of the extension detracts awfully from the main building itself. It's clearly set back a bit. It's clearly slightly smaller, and it's of a slightly different scale. So I think that's okay. I don't think we should get too hung up about the symmetricality. If you're going to move away from symmetricality, you're moving away from, if that's a word, I'm not sure it is. But if you're saying it's not going to be symmetrical in the future, or if it's not going to, and the house itself is not completely symmetrical, one side is slightly longer than the other. So I think that's okay. I think that the question mark, and this is where I'd like to know what Councillor Clegg thinks, because it's his ward. I think the question mark is about this great, long, wide window doors or whatever they are. Councillor Coburn Price said it was Beverly Hills. I don't know. She might have been there. I've never been to such a place, but I'll leave all that to her. But I just call it a big French window, really. I think that is out of place. And I think that if that were modified, even if there were a door there as part of what remained, it would be okay. So that's my views. Councillor Clegg has got his hand up now, so I will listen with interest to what he says.
Okay, there we are, Councillor Clegg. You've had your introduction. Your warm-up man's finished.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, if Councillor Greaves is so keen on having my opinion, I will let you all have it. I think that the extension is far too big. It's an ugly, horrible monstrosity. It is not in keeping with the rest of the building, and no matter what gets moved tonight, I will not be voting in favour of this planning application. And I've been quite clear, that's my opinion. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, would you like to put that into a proposal? Will we start with that as a proposal? Councillor Clegg?
I will move refusal then if you wish to do it as a way forward to try and get us moving one way or another to come to some sort of consensus, yes.
And the ground is...
second that.
Okay, Councillor Victoria, yeah. Got that. Do you wish to speak, Victoria?
No, there's no way I could vote in favour of this. Absolutely not.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder for refusal. Do you want to just decide exactly on your reasons, please?
Sarah, would you enlighten us?
I would say design. I would say overbearing nature of the extension. Councillor Greaves disagrees. Councillor Clegg agrees. I don't know what the other councillors think. But for me, the unhappy juxtaposition of the ground floor and the first floor design, and we all know that that is a subjective thing, and, you know, we're all human beings. We take a different view. I do welcome the fact that this application has definitely improved from when it was a great big gable and flush with the facade, but I still think there are further improvements to be made. So I would say design.
Design. Okay. Mr. Watson, any comments on that so far?
Well, Chairman, obviously we have to, it's been put out to the web, etc. So I'm taking the proposal from Councillor Clegg was on design, and that was seconded on inappropriate design.
Yeah.
The one thing Councillor Coburn-Price mentioned was overbearing. That wasn't something that was in the proposition. I don't think it is overbearing in terms of relationship to neighbours. So, Chairman, as I see the resolution put forward, it was purely about an inappropriate design for that building. Chairman, if anything else is introduced, I think that will need an amended proposition.
Okay. Are we happy with that proposition, Councillor Clegg, as it is? Yeah, Councillor Clegg, yes. You're happy. Okay. Has anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Clegg, could you put your hand down for me, please, on your machine? Thank you. So now we have a proposition before us that's been seconded. Would any councillor who is not in favour of this proposition, so you are in favour of passing the application as written, would you please indicate now by putting your hand up or speaking? Okay, so no councillor has indicated that they wish to pass this application as written. So therefore, the motion as passed. Is anybody against the motion as put down by Councillor Clegg and seconded? No, so that is unanimously passed then to reject this application on the grounds of design as written. Is that okay, Mr. Watson? You're happy with the wording, what's happened?
Chairman, it's a normal proposition that it's an inappropriate design. We'll write that into the refusal and obviously defend the case from there should there be an appeal.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we'll move on now to planning appeals. Does anybody have any questions, comment? Enforcement actions. Yeah, sorry, I can hear somebody shuffling the papers. No, okay. Hand up, Sarah Coburn-Price. Councillor.
Yeah. I've got 3 questions. 82 Albert Road, how's that coming along?
Sorry, through you, Chairman. I was up there monitoring the place across. The majority of the staircase has gone, but there is now a temporary scaffold and a large flue that has been installed to the rear. So, Chairman, those are issues that we want to deal with. Chairman, in the present COVID situation, we don't want to put too much pressure on businesses, but we are aware that we need to deal with those extra items.
Okay.
Could I ask about the next one, which is 5 Hall Meadows, Trawden?
Sorry, Chairman, I'm trying to flick through screens as well. Apologies for that. Chairman, I haven't got an update on that. Obviously, it was August for compliance, so I will get some information to you on that shortly.
Okay. Actually, it's a question of clarification on the penultimate one on this sheet, which is New Lathe, Burnley Road, Trawden. All of the fences, animal shelter, all of that has been relocated, so that's fine. And the ground is, I don't know, whatever you'd expect for a dressage menage. It's a chipping surface. I am not clear myself whether we're expecting that to go back to meadow or not.
Chairman, yes, and I've informed the appellant, the owner of that, and obviously with COVID, we gave them a little bit of extra time to do it, but they have indicated they will do that. And now, if they haven't, it's a prosecution.
Marvellous. Thank you very much.
Councillor Graves. Yeah, Councillor Graves, you're on. Sorry, can't hear you. Yeah.
I never unmuted myself before. I've been sitting here like a good boy, being very quiet. Yes, land to the west of 2 to 26 Khyber Street, which is actually Notts Drive, but why we can't call Notts Drive when Khyber Street disappeared 30 years ago, I'm not quite sure. In fact, it might be 40 years ago now. However, is there any progress being made on this? It says owner to be prosecuted. The last I heard, they couldn't be found.
Chairman, that remains the case. We had an address in the land registry. I don't know whether it's GDPR. We can say this because it's on the register in Silsden. Chap's not there, and we, despite efforts of the previous enforcement officer, we've not been able to locate him. So without a person to prosecute, it's difficult for us to get anywhere.
So where do we go with this now, or do we go nowhere? I mean, the land needs a bit of reinstating. I've not looked at it very recently, but it needs a bit of reinstating. But the whole of that piece of land between Hawley Street and Notts Drive is invariably in a tatty state. And the rest of it that's owned by whoever knows nowadays, our old friend perhaps. So do we just abandon it now and forget about it, or do we attempt to find a permanent solution, as it were?
Chairman, if it ever swaps hands, then we could obviously prosecute at that point, or ask the new owner. Otherwise, the law does allow us to do works in default, but then we will just be picking up bill after bill after bill for that kind of enforcement work. So there is a possibility of us doing that, works in default, but the other possibility is to try and get a private investigator to look for the owner. But again, costs involved, Chairman.
Okay.
I think that, okay, well, we'll go and have a look at it as the ward councillors and come back to the next meeting and tell you what we think, whether it's worth actually doing anything or not. Although, I mean, it sticks in the craw to allow a piece of land to remain tatty, simply because we can't find the owner. Okay, we'll do that. Can I ask another one, Chair?
Yeah, please do.
Langroyd Hall, and this is about the roof. Has any work started yet, or is there any news of when work might start?
Chairman, after the incident with the fire, we asked the developers when the contracts will be signed. They came back to say they hadn't signed the contracts. They would let us know about progress, but no further information. So I don't know when work will or won't start. But Chairman, obviously they had 6 months, and then they would have to put the roof back anyway. I don't think the date's right on there because there's a while yet before that 6 months expires.
I think from memory it's the end of the year, isn't it? Was it not 6 months from when the inspector issued his report?
It was, yes, Chairman.
Nevertheless, when we gave planning permission for the development, we were given verbal assurances, and there were no more than that, but we were given verbal promises by the agent or the developer, I forget which it was, that if they got planning permission, they would be on site within a month. And when some of us went up on the site visit, before we gave planning permission, and we met the developers there, they said again that they would, if we gave planning permission, they would be on site within a month. And I mean, as we know, there's a lot of people in Colne are very suspicious about this whole thing, and won't believe anything anybody says until the work actually starts and the work is actually taking place. And it's not very satisfactory that it's now 2 months, 3 months since we gave planning permission. I can't remember, but it's certainly more than a month anyway. It's not satisfactory. I'm not suggesting there's anything we can do about this other than ask Mr. Watson, with all his spare time he's got at the moment, to keep harassing them and keep reminding them of the promises they made.
Just to give you a heads up, Councillor, before we get into too much detail about that, I will give Mr. Watson an opportunity after we get to item 14 to give you a bit of a briefing on his department, and perhaps what you said about him having spare time will be succinct, if I can put it that way. So I would, we'll just leave it there for the time being, if that's okay.
That was an ironic comment I made.
Yeah, sure. Councillor Coburn-Price, you have your hand up.
I've just emailed I can switch the screen off here, and I've just emailed the developer again to say, is there any progress on a start date? So I've done that as a prompt from there. So if I get any information, I'll come back to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coburn-Price.
I've been reading up, that might horrify Mr. Watson. There is a thing, apparently, that we potentially could issue for a listed building, and just hearing how much time Mr. Watson has. An urgent works notice is something that can be a very short at hand piece of, apparently it takes 10 days to raise, so it's unlike when we've taken them to court in the past. And apparently that allows us to put a charge on the land, though admittedly the council does the work and pays for it. I just wondered whether we're also very terribly anxious about this building and how it's hanging in the balance and how potentially we might lose it. That's why I did that. The other thing that could be open to us would be a repairs notice. That takes an awful lot longer, I hear.
Chairman, my understanding of both is that you have to have deep pockets, because they can then serve purchase notices and you have to purchase the building. So we'd have to have £500,000 or so to do the works and to purchase. So you can go down those routes, but Chairman, there are consequences in terms of the other side then compelling you to purchase.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more on the enforcement, or are we happy with that? Councillor Greaves, you put your hand up again. You happy? Can't hear you, sorry. I still can't hear you. Can anybody else? No, you're happy? Put your hand down. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. So moving on, capital programme. There's a full report coming to the next meeting. Prompted from a comment from Councillor Greaves last month. We're over halfway through the municipal year, and capital programmes are not easy to, or projects are not always that easy to find that are good and good value for money for residents. So with that view and the fact that we still have £50,000 in the kitty, I'm going to suggest that we allocate each councillor £2,500 tonight, which would then leave our budget around about 18,000. Now, if any big requests come through the Colne bid for Colne area, with the number of councillors that still have funds, you could also bid into that, just like you do for Colne in Bloom or anything else. But I'm conscious that we don't want to do this in a rush in the new year, and then people are scurrying around to find good projects for the money. So that's my proposal. I don't know whether anyone's prepared to second that.
I'll second that, Chair, if you want.
Thank you very much. So that's the proposal. Councillor Cohen-Price.
Councillor Greaves' hand was up first, by the way, Graham.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. It's below the thing on my screen. I apologise, Councillor Greaves. Please speak.
I'll sit below the table if you want, and then you won't be able to see me at all. Thank you, Chair. I think this is an extremely sensible idea. I mean, as I said last time, there are projects which some of us at least want to proceed with, and I think this will be enough to allow that to happen as far as we're concerned in Waterside. I think it is sensible. There's no point in just hanging on to money forever, and there's still 18,000 in the kitty, which can go to the town centre if and when required. Can I just check? This is all capital. Is that correct?
Yes. This is my understanding. Is all the projects must be capital. There is no revenue. Some of you might still have some revenue money in your on the books from previous.
Yeah.
But there's no new money. All the new money is capital programs.
That's fine.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll certainly support it with pleasure. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, good. I mean, the principle is to spread some money out to all the areas of our Colne area, so that everybody can have some little projects. That was the original idea. Councillor Coburn-Price, your hands up.
Just wanted to be completely clear that this money is not the same money as the Resilience Town Centre money that came from central government. That's a separate pot entirely. Just wanted to check.
This is our allocation for the year.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, I've kept it a bit back because usually some people come and ask us for dog bins and various other little bits and pieces. So can I put that to the vote then? So, Councillor Butterworth, yeah.
Just reference Stephen Petty's.
Can I just stop you there, Neil, if I may? Can I come to that after we've done this? I've got it on my. Yeah, I'm probably just almost ahead of you. But if we can do this bit a step at a time, then I'll come back to that. So, is anybody against this? Would anyone like to speak against it, or is everybody in favour? So, unless I hear to the contrary, I will assume everybody's in favour. Councillor Nixon, you've got your hand up.
I am in favour, obviously, because I seconded it. But what I'm about to say is, could we potentially revisit this later in the year, pending what happens with COVID? Because we may be still at a point where we can't spend any money because of the restrictions. And I'd like to see, the time extended in which we can spend some money. You know, when the restrictions perhaps have been relaxed.
Okay, so I think my problem with that is that due to the fact that at the end of this municipal year, there's a fundamental change to the system within the council, the number of wards, etc., etc. I think we will find that the finance officers will say whatever is not spent in committees will go back into the central fund. That's what I've been led to believe with the inquiries I made last year, and I've heard nothing to the contrary this year. So that's why I'm trying to give you time. I mean, if each of you individually still has the funds to spend in your wards, and the council takes a view that they will let you keep those funds into the next year, that I would say would be very nice. But I doubt that that's going to happen. Councillor Greaves. I think you're muted still, Councillor.
Sorry. Sorry. I was just going to say that if decisions are made about use of any money carried over, I would hope they'd be made by councillors, whoever they are, and not by finance officers.
Absolutely, but you know, I'm just giving you as long a run in as possible. If you decide not to spend the money, then that's certainly a matter for your residents. I mean, it's not your money; it's the residents' money, really, isn't it? So are we all happy with that? Councillor Mann, sorry, I see your hand up. Councillor Mann. Can anybody hear Councillor Mann?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you briefly.
As a relatively new councillor, I'm just wondering why we don't have more revenue money. A lot of this money is obviously for new projects, but we've got nothing to maintain projects.
Okay, I mean, we could talk about this all night. This was a financial decision by the council, and that's us, because it is ongoing cost. The concern with anything that's revenue, you do it this year, then you might have to do it next year and the year after and the year after. So you're putting the cost. Councillor Greaves will talk to us for hours about this. If you, Councillor Greaves.
That's part of the truth. The other reason is that the pressure on government on council funding that's come from all the cuts imposed by central government over the last few years has had a much bigger effect on revenue, and it's the revenue budget of the council that's in real difficulty, whereas it's been able to find a bit of capital money in response to the demand by councillors generally to maintain these area committee budgets, when the finance officers, if I can refer to quite a lot of people in that way, would have scrapped them altogether. So it's to do with what's available, really.
Yeah, it's the type of money that's available. Yeah. But it takes a little more time, doesn't it? I mean, you've got to be a bit more careful. I mean, the first meeting we had, even a senior officer in the council tried getting a job done and realised he couldn't find the money to do it because it was to do with painting, which was maintenance and not capital. So
that's a problem.
Just are you happy with that, Councillor Mann?
Thank you. Yes. Not happy. But
So going back to the original proposal, then I assume everybody was in. I've heard nothing to the contrary, so I just wait. Everybody's nodding. So that's you. Moving on. The other item I've got then is the fact that Councillor Petty is no longer a councillor. The money that is allocated to that ward, in my view, is still for the residents in that ward, and therefore the money is there for schemes brought forward by the two remaining councillors in that ward until the elections. Okay, and the same will be with the 2,500. It should be the same amount so that it's equal roughly for all our residents. Some wards it's a few pennies more per head than others, but generally speaking, it is fair across the area. Are we happy with that? Is that unanimous, or would somebody like to say anything? No? Okay. Does that answer your question, Councillor Butterworth?
It does, thank you.
That's absolutely fine. Responsible for highways maintenance. Item 9. Anybody? Councillor Greaves.
I think, Chair, that we start to worry about this again if we know that Pendle Council is going to exist in the future. And the way things are at the moment, without getting political, the pressures at national level and county level are that we won't exist for very much longer. We might not even have elections here. So I think we just have to, there's no point having discussions with the county council about this now, because they'll just say, well, we're talking about other things.
Okay.
So we all know what we think, we all know what we want, but if we're, as a council, still here, then the councillors can pursue it in the future.
Okay. Councillor Nixon, next.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. I agree with Councillor Greaves, yes, but the fact that Lancashire County Council are closing Craddock Road for 2 straight weeks is proof in the pudding. Thank you. Without shutting a lane. They could shut a lane, fix the other half of the road, shut that and do the other half, and then they're gone. But they're shutting a main arterial route through Colne for 2 straight weeks. This is exactly what I was talking about months ago.
Because it's Lancashire County Council.
Correct. That's exactly it. Thank you, Chair. Rant over.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure every one of us has got war stories about the roads around here, haven't we? And we seem to travel outside of our borough, and every road seems to have less potholes than ours do for some reason. I don't know whether it's psychological or fact, but it seems to be that way. But anyway, are you happy to move on to number 10, or has anybody else any more to say? Councillor Nixon, have your hand up. Is that Councillor Greaves? Councillor Greaves, do you wish to speak?
Yes.
You wish to speak? Yeah, sorry.
Are we talking about item 10 now?
Yeah, just going to start on it now. So item 10, you're on.
Thank you very much. This has not proceeded as fast as a lot of us had hoped it would, in terms of talking to the residents and trying to thrash out a way forward. 2 months ago, it was coming to the committee. It came to the committee, and you very kindly agreed it should be deferred until this meeting. At that time, we thought, oh, September, the COVID thing will be more or less sorted out by now. And if anything, it's getting worse again. And the problem is, we wanted it deferred as the ward councillor, so we wanted to talk to the people concerned on Patton Street, to go through all the items, see what the best way forward was, and come back to this committee with what we thought and with some recommendations. The report as it stands is not acceptable for various reasons, but there clearly has to be a way forward sorted out, which is formalised and legalised and isn't just people squatting on the ground, which is what's happening at the moment. Shades of Gerard Winstanley for people who know their political history. But we do need to get it sorted. So what we would ask, it isn't desperately urgent, because if nothing happens in the next month or two, it's not going to make all that much difference, or any difference really. So, councillors are in touch with these people, particularly I think Councillor Mann has been talking to them recently. So I think that what we would ask is that if you can put it off again for another couple of months, then we will really make an effort, even if we can't have the sort of big round table meeting with them all that we want it to have. We'll find ways of having a socially distanced discussion and making sure there aren't more than 6 people there at the time from more than all the rest of it, and try and come back with some firm proposals. So I think we can promise we'll do that if you can defer it again, please. I'm sorry about this, but in the circumstances, it's just not been possible to do anything else so far. So can I move that we have it back on the agenda in November?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Councillor. I would suggest that we ask Lynn to put it on January's agenda if you don't tell her to put it on before that. So that gives you some wriggle room. Otherwise, it's going to be popping backwards and forwards, I suspect. Is that all right?
That's even better. Thank you very much.
Is everybody happy with that?
We'll try and pop it back before then. But
yeah, as I say, once you think you've got to a point where you can bring it back to us, then ask Lynn to put it on the agenda and it can be dealt with. But then that means, and then in January, well, one way or another, perhaps we've got to deal with it.
Well, that's okay. That's a deadline. And I mean, who knows what's going to happen now? I mean, we might all be locked up in our own cellars within a few weeks, the way things are going. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I move that?
Okay. So moving on then, item 11, trees, King George V playing fields, Colne. Anybody wish to speak?
Can I, Councillor Nixon can I just say this was referred from the, what's it called now? The Climate Emergency Working Group, where Councillor Coburn-Price and I and others came to what we thought was a sensible way forward. Since then, we've had the information from Mr. Watson that there isn't going to be a wholesale chopping down of trees, and what they're doing is pruning and clearing undergrowth, if I understand it correctly, and perhaps removing some of the brushwood, the bushes. I think that's what we were told. So there isn't an immediate emergency that lots of big trees are going to be chopped down. Nevertheless, quite apart from the antisocial behaviour which we know about, and perhaps recasting the immediate environment to make it less easy for people, we did wonder whether there is scope on King George V for some more tree planting anyway, as part of the tree planting programme. So there's 2 things really for people to discuss here. I've just seen that on Policy and Resources, there's a report which I think has been referred from the working group about tree planting in the coming planting season on Pendle Council-owned land. And if people have got views, and ward councillors have got views about planting on this land and indeed any other Pendle land, now is a chance to say so.
Okay. I think I was away for a few minutes there. Anybody else? Councillor Nixon, please.
Thank you. Yes, when I read this, I thought they were talking about removing all the bushes from King George V playing field, the bit between Skipton Road and where the old entrance is, and the grassland. Councillor Green seems to think that it was it just the what the word you used to describe the bit underneath the bushes? I can't remember what the word was. So they're not wanting to take down the bushes. They want to keep them in situ. Is that correct?
I don't know. To to be honest. All I know is the discussion which we had at the working group, and the message we got from Mr. Watson, who I think has come back with it now, perhaps, so we know exactly what it's going to say. I mean, the concern at the working group that was raised by people was that people would be taking down big trees. For the rest of it, I think we're probably happy to just leave it to what the ward councillors think should happen.
Yeah, I was thinking that I don't think it would really tackle the antisocial behaviour that much, because a lot of the antisocial behaviour occurs on the actual playground, which isn't really surrounded with bushes. Plus, I know at Colne Town Council level, we're hoping perhaps to look at CCTV for that part of the playing field. You see where the playground is. So, no, I wouldn't, as a ward councillor, I wouldn't be in favour of removing those bushes along Skipton Road. Definitely not. I think it would be a waste of time. Anyway, thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Councillor Butterworth. Can't hear you, Neil. Are you muted? Perhaps it's me.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can, loud and clear.
My apologies. I agree with Jonathan. Taking the trees down. In some paperwork I've seen.
Okay,
that it was to give a better view, but all you're going to see is vandals. So I don't believe cutting the trees down is worth it, really. The only thing that would really help would be CCTV. I mean, I walked down there the other night now, and there's always people, young people there messing about. So I think the only the police have been down there. I think the only solution is CCTV. I mean, you know, it puts everybody off. But cutting down trees for making a better view, I'm not in favour of that at all. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Anybody else? Councillor Clegg.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to deviate away from trees too far, but just to answer Neil's last comment, at next Tuesday's Town Council meeting, there is a proposal going there to put CCTV at the King George's play area. It'll be discussed on the night. I can tell him that we have actually got a price now for the CCTV. I don't want to discuss it on here now for the simple reason the whole of the Colne Town Council have not been given the details of it yet, so I think it would not be appropriate to say it on here. But you will all be being told when the agenda papers go out for that particular CCTV item tomorrow how much the tender is for.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, David.
Okay, Councillor Nixon.
Thank you. So now that that's been discussed and out of the way, Councillor Greaves mentioned that if anyone's got an interest in planting trees on land owned by Pendle Council, now is the time to speak. I have a very keen interest. I've already had trees planted on King George V, where the junction, where there's the junction of Castley Road and Varley Street. There's 5 or 6 new older trees. There was a delay. Lee Johnson couldn't get hold of older trees because there's a shortage, believe it or not. But yes, I will be very keen to support the idea of tree planting on Pendle Council land, and I'd like to throw my 2 pennies in when appropriate. It's probably not appropriate right now, but at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to move on now then. Reopening of Pendle Town Centres. Had an updated email this afternoon, which I managed to read once the electricity came back on. Anybody else? Any comments? Concerns? No? Good. They seem to be doing a good job. It seems very professionally run. Outstanding items, land off Lathe Street. I think that's for a future meeting, unless anybody has anything else. Okay, so the next part of the meeting then, it is confidential, so we have to disconnect our feed to the general public. For any of you who've been watching, thank you very much and good evening. Len, if you could let